Hey, welcome to the show. Welcome, everybody. This is the Council of Future Conference. My name is Scott. Prior to the Future Conference channel today, we're talking Chinese correction and talks with Iran. Question mark, because it may be war with Iran if the talks don't work. I'm, as always, joined by my good buddies Joe and Watcher. Guys, how you doing today?
Good, good. I forgot to show something backstage solely for watchers' benefit. So, and I thought the chat might actually enjoy this. So, this is one of the items that I found in our surplus area that we are setting up at the camp. But bros, check it out.
Oh man, you got the pith
This is a
on
piece
it.
of history right here, man. This is actually a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
Totally a piece of history. The Marine Corps issue pith helmet.
Can I tell you an interesting thing about that particular one? I could tell you that it was owned by a coach, not an instructor, but it's still a good one.
Oh yeah, all right, cool. We're that one is not going to be for sale, but
yeah.
For the find in the pile of stuff that we have. I also found a French helmet that I'm not selling. That's going to stay here. So.
Ooh. Is that one of like the old what era French helmet is it?
It's modern. It's in CCE, okay. But I really like it because I have a bunch of CCE stuff. So I'm gonna hold on to that.
Hey, is my mic sounding okay to you guys?
Sometimes.
What's it doing? I mean, because I've got the right mic this time. I actually checked all that stuff before.
Okay.
Okay. I did check the cable, so maybe that's what it was. It was yeah, sounds good. All right. I just wanted to make sure we're good. Hey, I want to apologize to everybody for the unscheduled miss on Monday. I put that squarely on my shoulders. Friday was planned. Monday was not planned. So I was in the middle of, well, let's just say I was medically preparing myself.
Please do not go into detail.
I am not going to, guys. Yeah. I'm just saying I was unable to come to the computer. I'll leave it at that. And because I was out of the loop, Joe and Watcher were left hanging, and so that was my fault. I apologize, guys, for leaving you guys in the lurch. Story. But I actually, by the way, I had some of the non-Chinese fentanyl during the procedure on. That was the last joke I made to the people that I was, who were the doctors and people around me. Was, so is this the Chinese fentanyl or is this the good stuff?
Good stuff.
But I'll be honest with you, waking up though from it, I just felt tired. I didn't feel like loopy, like I remember when I woke up from getting my wisdom teeth and I felt like I was like stoned or something. But this time it was all right.
A little known fact, Tactical Wisdom was so wise that he had 6 wisdom teeth. And the lovely Veterans Administration decided to take out 5 in one day. So it was a terrible, terrible week.
Good Lord.
Yeah. Not only did they take out 5 in one day, but the VA took out 5 in one day. So it was a doctor not good enough to get his own practice.
I was just going to say, as a guy who has had VA work get done and then later be revealed to be really bad work, and then wait for the VA, and now currently waiting for the VA to do more dental work. Oh boy, brave man. 5 at a time. Oof.
Nice. I didn't even know you could have more than 4 wisdom teeth. So that just goes to show how smart you really are.
Right.
I hope that wasn't just a clever excuse by the VA docs because they fucked up and actually pulled out 2 of your regular bowlers.
Yeah, well, no, now it's got me questioning, like, is there a secondary market for wisdom teeth, and is the VA involved?
There's some stem cells or something in the teeth, and they extract those. Joe, I want to ask you, have you ever seen this? I'm going to share. Watch our. I'll throw the link in the private chat. This has nothing to do with anything other than it's nice to see that they still do this. It's the one from the firearms videos X channel. Have you ever seen this,
Scott?
before?
Are you mocking this gentleman's improvised brass retention device?
I mean, there's a very specific reason why they're doing this. I don't know. I want to see if Joe has ever seen this happen.
I have.
I
mean, I have never seen this happen before. We would just turn them in.
Well, you were in an era when like you didn't get a lot of blanks, I would imagine, right? Like, I mean,
yeah.
No, we got some. We did miles training.
Well, here's what happens. This is what's called a spendex, right? They give you X amount of ammo, and you go and the idea is you build it to where, all right, we're not going to shoot it all in one day, so we're going to shoot like a 10% on day one, and it's like you kind of just push it out. But then you realize that because you carefully husband your blank ammo, at the end of the exercise, you have like 4,000 rounds of blanks, and you're like, well, we got to get rid of these because if we turn them in, they'll deduct that from our allocation next time around. So
yeah.
So instead of you have to turn in like 96% of the brass or whatever, or you have to do like a memo. So the reason why they do that, Watcher, is they put the ejection port right over that. It's called spendex. And you just get the soldiers to basically burn through all the blanks at the end of the training exercise.
Well, as someone who has to buy a lot of blanks now for training for himself, I'm wincing watching that video.
I know, right?
Blanks are not cheap.
Yeah. The Marine, not an activity that would ever be done in the Marine Corps. We'd have to be allotted those things in the first place.
Yeah. Well, like I know back in the 90s, blanks were harder to come by, but nowadays they're pretty easy to get. All right. I know we went a little early today, everybody, because we, like, believe it or not, we had our shit together. And I think it's a little easier for you guys because you're getting up an hour later than what you had typically gotten up recently. Is that correct? So this is a little easier on you guys.
Yep. Yep.
So hopefully we will start at the 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time more regularly in the near future. That way we're all in and out, in good time. All right. Anything else, Joe, that you want to chat about before we move on?
Hey, I just want to once again issue a thank you to everyone who sent stuff to Camp Ponderosa. Yeah. A lot of pretty cool stuff has arrived, and we're pretty happy about that. Vaughn, I know that Vaughn doesn't do things like this for recognition, but a friend of the show, Vaughn, showed up Friday, helped me set up the new TV, and brought just an entire carload of medical supplies. So that's actually something we go through here because there's a lot of veterans who might need a little bit of wound care. So pretty cool stuff. It's been pretty amazing to see everyone just giving to us, and it helps. It goes a long way. So
it's a question for you. I think they're both of you guys.
Well, we throw rocks at each other, but it's not to save ammo, just because it's more fun.
I'm holding out for Camp Sizzler.
Name if they want. I mean, I didn't name it, so.
All right. Watcher, how you doing, brother?
Good. I personally, I'm just wondering what sort of Korean obscenities on that hat.
Say that again.
I'm assuming it's got to be some kind of obscenity. The word,
on my hat?
Korean word on the hat.
It says San Diego.
Oh, well, that's less exciting than I thought, but still cool.
Yeah. No, it's a hat that they did. They did the Soul series last year, and it was one from last year that they did, and it might even got signed.
Oh, cool! Look at that. Yeah, neat.
So yeah,
everybody see all that platinum hair underneath there.
I know, right?
I'm
I'm not trying to hide it. I just feel like I look better with a hat on than
I
without.
have to address a travesty in the chat. Bionic Bee, we would never throw crayons. They're far too valuable as food.
Yeah, that's food. That's right. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into the action.
Josh Clark, you're right. I have been known to throw Osage oranges at students. That did happen. I might have thrown one at one of the Clarks, two of the Clarks. So, it did happen.
Joe, tell me if you've heard this one before. Trump weighs drone strikes on Mexican cartel terrorists amidst major hemispheric defense push. You know, I feel like drone strikes against cartel leaders is much more defensible than drone strikes against random ass dude who says he doesn't like America that lives in the middle of nowhere in Pakistan.
I really don't know that drone strikes on Mexican cartels are going to go the way we think they are, because of their reach into American cities. They're already causing mass amounts of violence in American cities. I think that's all it would do here.
Yeah, that's I guess to the point. Outside of maybe not, going after maybe police more or elected officials in these border states. I don't know what more they could do that would hurt us. I mean, because they're already. It looks like they're trying to hurt us pretty much already. No.
Well, I've got one. There's a.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say drive-bys at shopping malls. It isn't hard.
Well, yeah. Or, I mean, look no further than the classic right-wing meme from not that long ago of a pilot goes on strike, arrives back home, is told his family's been burned to death in the streets while he was out making that strike.
Well, so I hear you, that, but what you're doing is you're arguing against why we shouldn't ever take any kind of action against anybody.
But
so I mean,
you're saying what is the argument against it, and I'm presenting it. I'm not saying it's a good one.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's kind of like, well, then what should we do then? It's kind of like, what do you guys think? Because I think what you're bringing up is a totally valid point. I'm not arguing it from I disagree. I'm more arguing it to kind of get both sides of the issue out there. What's your guys?
I agree. The what should we do then is always left out of this conversation.
So I think it needs to happen, but my point isn't that we shouldn't do it. My point is that it's not going to be a one-way street as it has been throughout the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair. We shouldn't.
The cartels in Mexico have a unique capability to do things here and blend into the society here as an insurgent force that no one else does.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Joe. They're hitmen and their actors oftentimes will look at more like you and I than they would some kind of guy that just came across the border from Jalisco or Sonora or something like that. There's plenty of folks that live in America every day on their payroll that they could probably push into action. Maybe not completely uncoerced, but still, it's hard. How many U.S. Army veterans are probably on their payroll?
Well, there's another way I'd like to go about this too, which is I think that while I agree that it's something that needs to happen, I think that we have to talk about it on the grounds of reality. Because if people walk into this thinking that this is just going to be quick adventure, we're just going to go quick in and out, or we'll go down there, it'll be a punitive raid, and then we'll get out, and everything will be hunky-dory. People need to be prepared for what it's actually going to be, which is going to be like Vietnam, only on our border.
Let's dive into this article and see what. I want to address Hunch's $2 Rumble rant, by the way.
Yeah,
because he's right. Scott.
Well, let me read it here. Yeah, I'll read it and then I'll let you address it. Hunch Dirty Roof for $2 says, Scott, the cartel has incel assets everywhere. Yes, I know. But you drone strike a cartel leader, they will find the drone operator and kill him and his family. Fair.
That's what we said we would do as a right-wing insurgency. If that ever were to happen, feds, listen to all the words. So it's not unbelievable that the Hunch would. So, or that the Hunch.
Well,
I associated Hunch with cartels. Weird. I wonder why.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know if they would go after somebody like that when they could literally kill any member of Congress very easily. And or state representatives, state Senate members. I mean, all these people are practically unprotected.
What do you know about the Hispanic concept of honor? That's why they would go after the drone operator.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't know how much Hispanic concept of honor the cartels actually show. I mean, their actions are generally based on it.
Honor killings happen in Mexico too. I mean,
I know. I'm just saying. I don't know that it's kind of like a distorted version of what you're talking about.
I guess honor's not what I meant. I guess the macho ideal. I guess.
Yeah. I agree with that.
It's generally called honor culture, though.
Yeah. Mexican Iron Man for $10 says, guys, which online videos are more pathetic? The HHS secretary hanging with influencers and doesn't know how to hold or point a rifle, or Pan Bondi on Fox News, or Cash Patel Pretender Tactical. They're all pretty cringy, if you ask me.
They're all pretty cringy. The one that takes the cake for me, and I know it's going to set Ron off because he already scolded me for daring to question Kristi Noem. For me, it's Kristi Noem because she spends the time to get her hair perfect, and she is clearly just doing Instagram things.
Yeah,
let those guys do their job and leave them alone.
So. Yeah, the one pass I'll give her is everybody's, she's pointing to the barrel at that guy's head. I'm pretty sure that barrel is pointed about a foot off of his head.
Yeah, but see, to me, that was the least damaging part of the video.
Right, exactly right. It's the thing you pointed out is way more damning than that. But everybody was focusing on, she's flagging the guy's head. Well,
I mean, here's the truth: if she was really going on raids with them, like she's trying to give you the impression, that hair is a liability. It should be in a ponytail or tucked in somewhere and not out flowing in glorious locks that she always has, right?
Well, and she didn't even have the vest on. It was just basically draped over her.
Draped over her body. And for those who, like somebody I mentioned, tell me, no, she's sending a message to the cartels. What message is that sending them? None. They're laughing at the videos. I'm serious. I mean,
all right. Thank you, Mexican Iron Man. You're a scholar and a gentleman. All right, let's dive into this article here. After 2 months of U.S. military surveillance flights targeting Mexican drug cartels, with the initial phase focused on gathering signals intel over cartel-controlled territory, a new NBC report hints at a second phase. The report cites 6 current and former military, law enforcement, and intelligence officials with knowledge of the Trump administration are considering targeted drone strikes against Mexican drug cartels, now designated foreign terrorist organizations and specially designated global terrorists. Guys, if there is a problem with designating them thus, it is that you do paint yourself in the corner that, okay, you've now said they're just as bad as Al-Qaeda. What are you going to do? You got to now do something.
The ones that are already here, I know we've invoked the Alien Enemies Act on them, but when are you going to start, droning stash houses, right? Droning their warehousing ability in the U.S.
Yeah.
If you're going to designate them an enemy, treat them like an enemy.
Let's see. Here's more from NBC News. I press doubt when I hear NBC News. Discussions amongst White House, Defense Department, and intelligence officials, which are still at early stage, have included possible drone strikes. Okay, so this is super super speculative at this point. But it's probably something they are actually talking about. Against cartel figures, their logistical networks in Mexico, with the cooperation of Mexico's government, the sources said. Still, the administration has made no final decision and reached no definitive agreement about countering the cartels. And unilateral covert action without Mexico consent has not been ruled out and could be an option of last resort. The sources said it is unclear whether American officials have floated the possibility of a drone strike to the Mexican government. You know, Joe, the gelatin bomb that they used in what was it? Clear and present danger, right? The whole point was for them not to have any idea who blew up. They wanted it to look like it was a car bomb.
It was cellulose, not gelatin, but yes.
Oh,
Just dropping bombs full of Jello on them, but yes, that was the whole point, right? And actually, the clear and present danger methodology isn't a bad one, because if you remember, they first went after the labs, and then went after the transportation infrastructure. Not a bad plan. As many by the prophet, peace be upon him, were.
Yes, peace be upon his holy name, Tom Clancy. All six SIGINT operations over Mexico have dramatically risen in recent months. Sources noted that Trump. Let's see. So we've got P3 Orions. Let's see. We've got financial warfare, kinetic operations, MQ9 over Mexico right now. SIGINT, other SIGINT. So sources noted that Trump officials have pivoted the military intelligence and law enforcement resources towards combating the cartels. 2 guided missile destroyers have recently positioned in the region for a southern border mission. Making sense of it all, dismantling the command and control networks and the networks of FTO designated drug cartels in Mexico as part of a broader mission to secure hemispheric defense. You know, the interesting thing, Joe, is that I'm sure they track where these precursors are shipped to Canada and Mexico from China. When they start going after the ships, or maybe the idea is seizing the ships and calling them, foreign, asset forfeiture type, that would be an actual step that I would applaud, because then you're actually going after the people who are shipping it from China to these places.
It's not hard. You just set up surveillance on a Hutchison-Whampoa port. I guess they just call themselves Hutchison now because they're trying to get rid of the Chinese-sounding name. But you just put surveillance on a Hutchison port, follow the trucks that leave. Not hard to do. But it would be one way of doing it. It's probably more effective. So
that's kind of what I think. I mean, and let's be honest, we're already in a trade war with China. What more can you do?
However, I have to make my obligatory statement, because just because we might want to use it on a bad guy doesn't make it a good thing. Asset forfeiture is literal armed robbery. So
I think, using it on the high seas against the foreign powers' assets would be a little more palatable for me, but not a lot more.
On the high seas, it doesn't violate the U.S. Constitution, so knock yourself out on the high seas. It's when you pull over a guy who's going to buy a car and he's got $5,000 in cash with him.
In cash, oh, you have no good reason to have this, so we're going to take it.
Right.
Trump only, let's see, Monster 82 for $2. Trump only bombs who Israel tells him to. All right.
We knew Dem Jews would rear its ugly head today, but I didn't think it would be that early. But there it is.
Yeah. All right. The main concern for CIA officers or special forces units typically operating under a joint special operations command, who would likely be tasked with carrying out the drone strikes and other targeted operations against cartel, is the risk of creating a power vacuum when cartel leadership is dismantled. The question becomes whether drone warfare is most effective solution, or if hybrid warfare tactics similar to those used in Syria and or the Middle Eastern conflicts could be utilized to pressure or provoke rival cartels into turning on each other. You know, Joe, there's a reason why we don't have, like, in the middle of nowhere, right? We don't have typically armed bands of people just kind of rolling around doing whatever they want, right? You have people who may be armed, but they are generally law-abiding as they are armed. Oddly enough, in Europe, it's the same thing. Now, it's a little different in Europe because there are no-go zones in cities in Europe. But it's like in a civilized country, you just don't have completely uncontrolled areas of the country, right? Unless there is just no people there.
For all of you who are hammering away furiously on your keyboards right now, let me just point out that Scott has been out of the U.S. for a long time. Actually, we actually do. I mean, if you go into Detroit or Chicago, parts of New York, there are absolutely armed groups just going around doing whatever they want. So it's a matter of scale, though. You're right. We don't have it everywhere. But we have it in an awful lot of places that we don't want to talk about.
I guess you could say we have discrete areas where you have a lack of lawful control, and it's mostly like, you know, it's kind of like the gang situation in the 80s with Los Angeles, right? Like you had neighborhoods and things like that were, you know, controlled by, you know, various street gangs and whatnot.
So I'm going to finish. Because what they're not telling you about is the nightly street takeovers that happen in cities across America that are actually getting increasingly more violent, and the police are increasingly disengaging from them.
Yeah.
So you might think, well, how does that tie to gang activity? It 100% does, because those groups are able to buy all the cool Dracos and AK-47s because of the drug money that they get from selling drugs that came here because of the cartels. So I think that we are actually on the way to what you envision,
right?
About halfway there. So,
yeah, you know, if you compare the way it was, say, 20 years ago to the way it is now, it's definitely more lawless now. But we're still nowhere near, you know, the level of collapse that you have in places like, you know, Mexico, where the central government really only controls a few big cities, and that's about it.
As I've heard some strategically smart guy or tactically wise guy say, you are already in the collapse. So.
All right. So, but the point here, Joe, is that there is a reasons why Mexico can't get their shit together. And you know, if we were to go after them, despite the pain it would cause us, that would potentially give us the opportunity to give the Mexican government, if it were inclined, which I don't think it is, or probably ever will be, to actually, you know, occupy these areas with their law enforcement and military forces, and to be able to gain control again of these, you know, lawless areas. I think that's the idea. I just don't know if it's even possible.
Well, I think that once we begin bombing cartel members, and we're obviously going to, that switch gets thrown. And a couple people in the chat are talking about Glock switches. And let me point something out. Look at the sentencing of folks from certain demographics for Glock switches.
Say Chicago.
Versus folks from another demographic. And you'll find that one group gets prosecuted to the mats for converting firearms to full auto, and another group gets probation. And that's where you see that justice isn't actually wearing a blindfold. She's wearing a mask.
No, I'm 100% with you there. I don't think it's always been ironic. They complain that, you know, sentences for violent crimes are much higher in urban areas, but yet when you look at exactly what you just said, federal crimes, you know, specifically gun related or other kind of exercising your God-given rights related, how is it always the white guy, you know, who ends up bearing the onerous burden, and some of these inner city youths are able to get away with time served or some sort of smack on the wrist. All right. Let's move on, shall we, to the next topic. White House considers withdrawing 10,000 troops from Eastern Europe. Joe, I had two stories for this one. One was focused on this, and the other one was focused on here are all the things that the EU is doing that will get America to disengage from NATO. This is, if you haven't seen this one coming from a mile away, I don't know what else to tell you. And this is exactly what I voted for.
Yeah, that's exactly what we voted for. That's a great idea. I say we bring them back and use them along the southern border.
Yeah, we're going to need them. White House considers withdrawing 10,000 troops from Eastern Europe. The Trump administration has mulling the potential to withdraw troops from Eastern Europe. There was a half a dozen American and European officials privy to the discussion. We're saying this. The internal discussion is specifically focused on reducing U.S. troop levels in Romania and Poland, long dubbed NATO's most important eastern flank countries. If elected, the move could cut Pentagon troop surge, which began following the start of the Ukraine war, after some 20,000 soldiers were surged there to bolster Eastern Europe. The U.S. troops have been deployed to the Baltic states. Last month, 4 U.S. soldiers died during a training exercise. Members of that was such a weird one, that the M88, that I guess it rolled over into a swamp and they got trapped inside.
I don't know that it's weird. It's rare, but things like that do happen from time to time.
I know. It seems like it would have been, I guess it actually sunk into the bog, like to where you couldn't see it. And so that was the kind of weird thing about it.
Poland. I mean, what are you going to do?
I know, right?
How many Polacks does it take to pull an M88 out?
Unmarked swamps on maps. What are you going to do?
Well, this is a question on our troop deployments throughout Europe. As we're struggling with problems on our southern border, how many nations have volunteered to help us and set up a base along our southern border? Oh, by the way, we would never allow that, right? So
that's right.
Why are we defending the rest of the world?
Joe, I honestly think that what's happening right now is part of the behind the scenes dealing with Putin and Trump. I think that Trump has basically said, listen, if you guys do X, then we'll start pulling guys out of specifically Poland and Romania, the countries that are essentially right up next to your country. I think that actually makes a little bit of sense, but let's kind of dive back into the article here. Let's see. U.S. troops have also been deployed to the Baltic states. In the early morning hours of March 25th, I don't want to go into that one. That's about the soldiers who died. Addressing the potential U.S. withdrawal in the region, NATO Secretary Mark Rutte said that this would be done in close coordination with European allies. So, I mean, they're already talking about the fact that he's saying that. He wouldn't have made that comment if it wasn't happening already. The Trump White House has been ramping up the pressure for European states to shoulder more of the burden for defense of the continent, including committing to a higher defense spending. NATO leadership has been in discussions for coming up with a plan to fill the gap of U.S. leadership within the alliance 5 to 10 years down the road. Amid speculation, Trump could pull the U.S. out of NATO or at least greatly reduce Washington commitments. Financial Times wrote last month the discussions are an attempt to avoid the chaos of a unilateral U.S. withdrawal from NATO, a fear sparked by President Donald Trump's repeated threats to weaken or walk away from the transatlantic alliance. I mean, Joe, I'll be honest with you. I'm ready for NATO to go the way of the dodo, and if that means by us leaving it first in order to kind of put a bullet in the back of its head, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, right. 100%. I think that we absolutely let them defend themselves. They're so fired up about defense now and wanting a war with Russia. Let them do it on their own hook. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they keep reminding us that their market is bigger than the U.S. Okay, your economy of Europe is bigger than the U.S. So then you can spend the $1 trillion on defense that you need in order to defend your continent without the aid of the United States. Financial Times wrote last month, discussions are an attempt to avoid the chaos of a unilateral U.S. withdrawal from NATO, a fear sparked by Donald Trump's repeated threats to weaken or walk away from the transatlantic alliance. That actually makes sense. And that shows that the Trump administration is not acting irresponsibly here. They're not just kind of, shooting from the hip and deciding, oh, we're throwing these troops today because we said so. This is a deliberate process that's ongoing. And I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't contingency for even more troops than the 10,000 to be pulled out. All right. UK, France, and Germany and the Nordics are amongst the countries engaged in the informal but structured discussions, according to 4 European officials. Their aim is to come up with a plan to shift the financial and military burden to European capitals to present it to the U.S. ahead of NATO's annual Leaders Summit in The Hague in June, Financial Times concluded. But as we've detailed before, the Eastern flank countries prefer to remain under the U.S. security. Of course they do, because that allows them to say whatever the fuck they want.
Well, it also allows them to not spend very much money.
Well, let's see how they like it when they actually might be accountable for the the stupid things their leaders say. I hate to see us pull troops out of Poland. I'd rather pull troops out of Germany, but hey, I get it. I understand why Poland's closer to Russia, and if we're trying to de-escalate with Russia, then this would make sense as something that you would do in order to affect that. Gentlemen, any other thoughts, comments about this one?
No, I just think it's way overdue. We should have brought them home a long time ago, especially given the fact that they're spewing actual literal hate against us. I'm out. See you.
I'm not against having alliances with countries, right? Like aligning your interests with individual countries. But the problem with this is that when you have an entire NATO alliance, you're aligning yourself to the entire alliance. So that means you're co-signing all this crazy shit that like China, like for instance, Spain is calling for Europe to realign towards China for its economic needs versus and cast off the U.S. So I was like, well, so I guess because China shares so many of your common values. So it just kind of shows you who your friends really are. All right, let's move on to the next story. This is from a Reuters article. Mali accuses Algeria of shooting down a surveillance drone, recalls its ambassador. Joe, this is a perfect example of what could lead to future conflict.
Boy, that's a very interesting war to happen. Mali versus Algeria. Talk about throwing rocks at each other.
Yeah.
It would be more effective than the way the average Malian or Algerian fires their AK-47 pattern rifles.
Well, the irony is that this would be like the war of the desert of the rat patrols, because there's literally nothing but desert between these two countries. It's and a lot of it too. These are right in the middle of the Sahara.
Yes, and it's an interesting conflict. Algeria still has ties to France, even though it is allegedly independent. So this could be just a bigger piece of the Mali-France anger back and forth. But I don't know. Interesting.
Well, I'm just doing a quick fact check here. In fact, I do believe it is. So Algeria is a NATO partner, whereas Mali is one of these kind of breakaway Sahel countries that have banded together. Part of
a new military alliance between Mali, Burkina Faso, and who's the third one?
Niger.
Yeah, and Niger. Boy, talk about some military powerhouses joining up, right?
Well, and let's be honest, all of them are fighting Boko Haram and Al Qaeda.
Yes. But one thing I can assure you about the new West African Military Alliance or Sub-Saharan Military Alliance, they will have some banging uniforms, probably designed by Ibrahim Traore. So.
Yeah, the Hugo Boss of the Sahel region.
The Hugo Boss of the Sahel. Yes.
All right. Mali accused neighboring Algeria of shooting down one of its surveillance drones near their shared border in a statement read out by the security minister on national television. The West African country and its allies, Burkina Faso and Niger, God, Joe, it's almost like we know this. It's almost like we've been reading about these stories for the last 2 years or so. Will recall their ambassadors from Algeria for consultations over the incident, they said in a separate joint statement. Mali said the drone wreckage was found 9.5 kilometers south of the border with Algeria after it was shot down in the night between March 31st and April 1st. With absolute certainty, the Malian Armed Forces drone was destroyed as in a premeditated hostile action by the Algerian regime. The three Sahel countries said in their joint statement that they energetically condemned the irresponsible act of the Algerian regime. I love this kind of flowery language they're going with.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened on April 1st, so surprise, it's all just an April Fool's joke.
We were just kidding. This is probably because they have American or British consultants writing their State Department things.
No. Let's see. The Mali's army said in the statement at the time that one of its unmanned craft had crashed while a routine surveillance mission. Yeah, Joe, I'll be honest with you. These little things don't seem like much, but when you start withdrawing ambassadors, and especially with these kind of Central Sahel countries, they're all kind of have a Napoleon complex in a way, and some of the way they operate things. They also have a lot of Chinese and Russian guys hanging out in their cities, doing everything they can to secure rights to minerals and all the kind of other opportunities within these countries. So shocking if they work against the interest of a NATO partner nation.
Well, again, will Algeria use that partner nation status to try and tap some additional help if this goes further? Who knows?
All right. Joe, I kind of forgot about this earlier because I talked about that YouTube post, but can I get you to retweet the X link again?
Again?
I'm sorry.
Not
again.
Wants me to do things.
I'm sorry. To interrupt the flow of it. Actually, this is the tactical wisdom segment of the show now. Joe, after you retweet that, would you like to talk about tactical wisdom?
Well, first I want to talk about Matt, one of our fans who's been great supporting us on Twitter. He just put out a tweet that said, "What time is it? Future Conflict Time," featuring the Watcher on the Web, Joe Dolio, Scott McCullough, with super chats by Hunch the Roofer. So that's actually pretty darn good. But I'm trying to find your tweet first. But over at tactical-wisdom.com, there is a new article out there about getting serious about training. There's a lot of folks who don't seem to be all that serious about getting out and training because, hey, Donald Trump won. Why should I train? And in all honesty, your risk level has gone up, and the potential for domestic or otherwise conflict has actually gone up. So you need to continue training. This weekend, we did a great class with some guys. We had dudes in here, and we did combatives. So Saturday morning, we did unarmed self-defense. Saturday afternoon, we did ground fighting. Sunday morning, we got into beating each other with sticks and ASP batons. And then on Sunday afternoon, we did knives. So it's pretty cool. So in order to help you get more serious about training, I'm going to get serious. I'm going to put this offer out here. If you come to any of my combatives trainings, whether it's unarmed defense, ground defense, sticks, knives, cold firearms combatives, you can then forever retake that class for free because I want you to come and get reps in and review that and continue to develop those skills. Yeah, actually get out there and make things happen. So we have to get out there. And I do address some of the common complaints in the article that we get from people about, well, bro, if you're not teaching the class literally 6 blocks from my house, I'm not going to travel there. Matt and I put in a lot of travel to go places. You could drive a couple of hours to come and see us. We can't be everywhere. There's only like 5 or 6 of us that do real serious training all around the country. And there's a whole bunch of you. Maybe you should be the one doing some of the traveling. I'm just throwing that out there. The other one is just people say, why don't you just put your classes out on YouTube? Well, this is literally how we pay our bills. If we put our classes out on YouTube, there's never a reason for you to come. But the value of the class isn't always the content. The biggest value of the class is meeting together with like-minded people, breaking bread and building strong relationships. It's not just always about the class. Get out and let's make things happen, right? Come on out and try things. I will be adding, I'll be putting out another article this week where I talk about some classes I'm adding, some mounted ones, getting out there and actually learning some mountain survival, both summer and winter variants, along with some of the tactical applications that apply only in the mountains. So, for example, Scott, what's your react to deer ambush drill?
Turn to the ambush and charge into it.
Can you do that in a mountain environment?
That's a little harder, but you can sure as hell pour a lot of fire into it.
I'm going to send you a photo of where we're going to demo why that's not going to happen. Unless you're a billy goat in the mountains, you're going to have to modify it. And you're right. The answer is pour a lot of fire into it and begin maneuvering. You're not going to directly assault into the ambush in the mountains. So you got to learn how to do things. And getting out there and actually doing it is better than actually watching a video and trying to figure it out. So come on out to training, get serious about it, because the other side is invest in yourself. It's not just money you spend, it's money you're investing, right? And you're getting a big payback from it. So what I got coming up is right there on the screen. We've got Fieldcraft coming up the 25th to the 27th. I've already got a few people signed up for combative skills. There's a whole weekend where we're doing not just the ones we did this weekend, but we're also throwing in cold firearms combatives using your rifle, maybe some bayonet action. There'll be some good stuff going on. I've got a couple training bayonets. We might even have a bayonet fighting competition. We do knife fighting competitions in the knife portion, by the way. So that's always fun. And then you can get out there and do it bayonets too. And then we have the big the training week coming up. That May 23rd through 25th, Community Security Ops is actually the last class of that week. We'll have NC Scouts RTO course, followed by SIGINT, followed by Night Ops. And the friend of the channel, Texas Border Rescue, is going to be up there on Thursday the 22nd doing a totally free one-day discussion of how they used community security operations on their ranch. And we'll probably show some videos on the new big screen TV we have in the training room. But show some videos of what they were doing and how it was going and all that kind of stuff as prep for a class he's going to offer later in the year. So come on out May 16th through the 25th. It really is just a week with 2 weekends wrapped around it, but it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, no, it's going to be awesome. And you've mentioned it plenty of times before. This is a great opportunity to meet people who are like-minded, who share your values. I'll be honest with you, there are people that I've met in the one weekend I spent at Matt's that I'll remember to the end of my days. Some really wholesome, fun people. And even if they have no idea who you are, you'll get to know them. You'll become friends. Guys, real quick, I wanted to share something with the. I don't try to push the channel stuff like subs that much, or what. I honestly don't even pay that much attention to it. But today I just happened to check it before the show, and guys, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but YouTube clearly hates us. So this is a little snapshot of the channel analytics. Current subscribers 4,411. Right, so there's some symmetry there. 4,411. But we have lost 21 subs in the last. Instead of people actually subscribing, people have been unsubscribed, and those are most likely YouTube auto unsubscribing people based on activity or whatnot. If you get banned or anything like that on YouTube, it will kick you off. Feel free to interact with this post and just kind of get it out there. It'll put the YouTube link out there. The idea is see if we can't gain a little ground. It brings this. I'd love to get 5,000 subs. We were growing to up. What Watcher? What was it? 18 months ago is when we hit 4,000.
Yeah, we were on a very upward trajectory, and then it was literally a single day that.
We stopped around. We plateaued at about 4,200. We got up to maybe four. I don't know, four. We've never been to 45. I don't think so.
Yeah, we got a community.
Anyway.
So.
Yeah, and we were talking. I make no bones about it. The reason why we continue to stay on YouTube is because YouTube brings in more super chats than Rumble. If you guys all left YouTube and did your super chatting over on Rumble, we would probably, we would deorbit the station from YouTube's orbit soon after and just go to a single channel. Well, actually, we'd still be on X as well.
Mexican Iron Man has an idea for channel growth, but I want to address something in the chat. A lot of folks talking about doing things for folks with mobility issues. The RTO and SIGINT courses are great for that. And there's some talk about canes down there. For those of you who are less mobility, who are more mobility challenged, during the class this weekend, we had a guy with a cane in the class, and I let him use his cane during the stick portion of the class. I have an entire curriculum based around tactical cane use. It comes from Hapkido, and tactical cane use is a thing, man. Come on out to class anyway. You don't have to be the most mobile person in the world. I'm not the most mobile person in the world.
Well, Mexican Iron Man seemed to think that I need to undergo another procedure in order to get some DEI. Haven't you heard the DEI is out?
I have to tell everyone what your procedure was that you had to go through. So, I mean,
well, I jokingly told my daughter the morning of or whatever that I'm going in to get an anal probe. I mean, yeah. Anyway, if I use a VTuber filter, Watcher, when are you going to launch your fully rigged character as a VTube style avatar? That would be.
People didn't like it, so I kind of abandoned it.
Well, it's because your boobs weren't big enough.
Well, there's that.
You clash with the beard, so
that's right. Oh boy. All right, we've gone off the rails. Anyway, I just wanted to share this with you guys. If you haven't subscribed, it is helpful. If you don't want to, that's cool too. Eventually we will go away from YouTube, but until then, let's show them what we think about there.
By the way, on the cane issue, for everyone in the chat going back and forth about it, TSA will not take your cane from you when you go to get on a plane. Wink, wink. Ow, my knee. Guess I'm walking with a cane today. Anyway.
All right. Let's see. Let's move on. Guys, main topic for the day, China. China's
You didn't say it right.
China. The China correction. China strikes back. So as you guys know, we weren't on Monday, so we didn't really get to talk about the tariffs, but tariffs are a thing. I tend to think, guys, that Trump is not looking. Look, can I share something to give you my take on the tariffs, and then we will go into this. And I can do it here with a single tweet. There we go. So let me share my screen. So this is my take on what I think is happening here. So this is, I'm retweeting Chamath Palihaptithia. I think he's Indian. No, I think he
sounds like a guy from Poughkeepsie. He does.
No, he's I think he's from Suriname, maybe not Suriname. Anyway, he's what's the island off of the Tamils tigers were from? What's that island?
The island off of where?
Off of India. Off the I'm
Sri
losing
Lanka?
it. Sri Lanka. Thank you. I think he's originally from Sri Lanka. Anyway, this is his view on the tariffs, and he's a venture capitalist guy. From I think he was one of the Facebook guys from the very beginning. He says Trump let tariffs reaction play out for a few weeks, sees the trend of capitulation, and is emboldened to keep going. He fields offers from everyone, negotiates with no one, then brings everybody to the MAL in a month or two and puts an offer on the table. Bretton Woods 2.0. It's simpler, more effective to have one grand bargain and then negotiate piecemeal with 80 countries. I'm focusing on this figure, figuring out what terms matter most to the MAL Accords. I have a few in mind, which are obvious, but would King make the U.S.? I don't buy the whole U.S. hegemony. This is the moment to go for the jugular and establish a world order around America. So if you're not familiar with it, the Bretton Woods was when they basically in the 1940s, they ordered the entire Western world, essentially, and they want to say it was 40-something countries, but it could be more, to basically accept to settle trade and things like that in the U.S. dollars. It set the kind of it also brought all the gold to the U.S. This is what kind of established the other countries depositing their gold in the U.S. Because that secured their piece of the pie, if you would. And I think that's what the Trump administration is trying to do. Okay, that's my kind of. If you want to know more about it, I that's about all I can say. Because I'm just not articulate enough in these kind of deep finance stuff to sound any smarter than I am.
So what you mean is, and that's all I've got to say about that.
That's all I got to say about that. That's right. All right. I think I should just talk like this for the rest of the show. After Beijing's overnight inaction in response to President Trump's new 104% effective rate tariffs on Chinese goods and released the white paper on trade between the two superpowers, there now appears to be a response from the Chinese side. China raises tariffs on U.S. goods to 84%. I don't think that this matters because China is not a significant market of a significant percentage of our economy.
Yeah, no, it is funny that they're now they're gonna get bit in a pretty specific way. So U.S. pork farmers are gonna not be happy about this, and a couple of other people. But apart from that, it's the class. It's literally the problem which caused the first Opium War. China really does not want most of what the rest of the world has, but they want to trade outwards. And so the only thing they really want from us is precious metals and that kind of stuff. And that's not sustainable.
Yeah. Let's see real quick. I want to get these two super chats here. Random PW Guy 84 for $5 says, yeah, the yuan crash and the tariffs overhaul hurting China. What is the likelihood of the trade war turning into a kinetic war? Well, I mean, so that's just it, right? That's why we talk about these things.
When that's happened before.
Well, right. And Joe, this is, we've always kind of talked about, with future conflict, it's important to look at the warnings and indicators for what the hell is happening out there in the world. And this economy stuff is absolutely potentially setting up what comes next, right?
You really missed an opportunity for a great joke there. What Sahel is going on?
Sahel is happening. I know. But we kind of moved off the Sahel, mark. So, yeah, and here's the other thing, too. And once again, this is my limited finance speak here, is one of the reasons why China is selling U.S. treasuries is because they have to prop up the yuan, and in order to do that, they have to get rid of. The problem is that the U.S. treasuries are actually a decent place to park money in a time like this. So it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword for them. They have to prop up their own economy, but they have to sell an actual asset to do it, which is never a good thing. Hunch Dirty Roofer for $2 says, Chamath did a really great interview with Andrew Schultz. I recommend it. Everyone check it out. It gives a breakdown of the possibilities of tariffs. Yeah, I don't know that I saw this interview. I watched his interview with Paul, the Secretary of Commerce. What's his name? It's escaping me. Anyway, and I thought that was great. And it actually made me think that the Trump administration actually has a plan versus, and he also did an interview with Abesnet, and that was pretty good too. Let's go back to the article. Bloomberg reports that China plans to counter Trump's tariffs with an effective tariff rate of 84%, escalating the trade war. Countermeasures go in effect on Thursday. More from Bloomberg. A day earlier, China vowed to fight to the end if the U.S. insists on new tariffs. Chinese exports were already facing blanket levies imposed this year and punitive taxes from Trump's first term. And following the Biden administration, China also added 6 firms to its unreliable entries list and the 12 U.S. entities from its export control list. Initially, Trump justified the 34% tariff hike on China as a fair way to match the barriers that Beijing has placed against the U.S. firms and goods, and then added them to the Beijing retaliated with its own levies. I kind of want to play that video that we watched before the show, the Kevin O'Leary video now, because I think this is this actually is an appropriate spot for it. Let me give you the link for that. Let's see. That's not it. Sorry, I'm just finding the link here. All right, here we go. Watcher, I'm dropping it in the private chat here. If you could just play this video. And then feel free, you guys, to pause it because you've already heard it, so you know where it's going. So if you want to...
You didn't post
it. Yeah, I see it. Yeah. That's the only problem with these titles. When you post those, it doesn't post the link. I mean, this is about the basest thing I've heard in I don't know how long. Joe said, he's the guy from the Shark Tank, and Joe said, after listening to this, I might be trying to wipe the Shark Tank.
Actually, China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, and sell it back here. Never has an administration
400% tariffs. What would that look like?
Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. This is not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world. The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well, hold on a second, Kevin. Well, I hear you, but hold on. If we're talking about people the average consumer, not necessarily the head honchos of businesses all across the globe, can they withstand the pressure of that sort of tax on the goods?
Short-lived. There will be.
But what's your timeline compared to, you don't know the average American's timeline, what they can actually survive. There's people right now who can't survive.
400% tomorrow morning, cheese on an airplane to Washington to cut a deal.
Yeah. So if you go hard in the paint, China won't be able to. Now, there are those who kind of see China a little differently, and I kind of do. I say, here's the problem, Joe, is that Xi could literally say, "Fine, we'll bear the burden," right? Because we're not gonna bend the knee, and we're China, and we're gonna bend the world to us. Versus, and this is where we've talked about in the past, where China could literally set 100 million people on fire, and be able to take that burden. And this is an economic burden, not one of like actual physical destruction.
What have we seen countries do when their economy faces ruin and their back is against the wall?
Yeah, they go to physical war. It's exactly right.
They really go to war, yeah.
And so I think that China would potentially push that direction. Here's the other thing, Joe. Inside an authoritarian system, you always have other people looking for opportunities, people within the system. Now, you could see some sort of violent coup against Xi. I think that is unlikely, but I'll be honest with you. I don't have sources inside the Chinese Communist Party to know how likely that is. But historically, that is not something that we've seen in China, in communist China. The communist Chinese have been very good at kind of sniffing out traitors like that and putting them up against a wall.
The closest thing we've had to that of the modern era was the fighting that occurred in the 3 days following Tiananmen Square.
Right.
Where the People's Armed Police actually decided to resist the Chinese army, and it did not go well. Because the Chinese army was like, oh, wait. We might have listened to you for 5 minutes, but now you're actually shooting at us, so now we're going to kill you all. Because China doesn't value life the way we do. They could, as you said, literally burn 100 million people and it wouldn't matter. But it's not just that people get their back up against the wall and decide to lash out on their way out and be like, I'm going to go out swinging. War is a great economic driver, and it is a way to fix bad economies, because think of all the things you have to buy and build and factories that have to be created and all of that. So there is that big potential. We have to walk a fine line here. I know everyone says push China over the edge, but I assure you that anyone who, the same thing I said about Putin, anyone who is capable of pulling off a violent coup against Xi is going to be 10 times worse for America than Xi Jinping was. So you have to think about both sides of the coin. Just because you push someone to overthrow him doesn't mean they're automatically going to be your friend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's well said. And I think, this is just one of those kind of things where it doesn't always go the way you think it may go. Somebody may go with an asymmetric, an asymmetric response, which is the response that nobody's expecting. Like we think we got them over the barrel in a trade war, and then all of a sudden they said, "Fine, we'll invade Taiwan."
Well, I believe it was the foreign minister of China who said, and we have to take this comment at face value, because the Chinese always say two things with their comments, right? They're pretty good at issuing a statement. He said that whether it's a trade war or an actual kinetic war, if America wants a war, China will give it to them. So he was actually laying out, and this was last week before the next 2 rounds of tariffs by each country came out. This was before that. He was literally pointing out that it's a short road from financial war to physical war.
Yeah.
And that's what he was actually saying. And I think that we would do well to heed that. I'm not saying go put pressure on China. I absolutely think we should. But this Trump-esque balls out, full-on press might not go the way we think it will.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I am inclined to appreciate this more than, say, a more Joe Biden-esque version of this type of. That being said, you just have to know that things can always go high and right, and you just have to be ready for that. It's kind of like if you're going to play hardball, you got to be prepared to get hit. All right, let's go back to the story here. Let's see. So the S&P 500 was like just creamed this week, but not as bad as some people were expecting. Some people were expecting like a 20% loss, but they're only down, I think, 10% for the week. So those are, none of the days had more than a 5% loss, I think, which is not as bad. Like the story on Monday was like, well, the world didn't end, with the stock market. Yeah, it's down, but the problem is, Joe, is that most of the people who vote for Trump don't own stocks. They may have some mutual funds here or there, but they're not what you'd call big asset holders, right?
Right.
And so these are not going to generally affect, now 529s, these are the kind of IRAs, these are the kind of things that are getting affected by this. But, ironically enough, and this is what I've been telling my wife, because she's been pretty stressed about, she sees the S&P 500, she knows we own stocks. She's kind of like, holy cow, we just lost a bunch of money. And I'm like, listen, we're not trading our money in this year. So we have plenty of time to hold and then, recoup any kind of unrealized gains that we may have lost in this.
You just said something that I think is super, super, super important. Unless you were willing to sell all of the funds that you had in an account at that moment when you saw that high price tag, that was never your money. That was always money in potentia. It never manifested.
Unrealized gains. That's exactly right. And so, here's my recommendation. Just don't fucking look at if you're stressed over your investments or whatever, don't fucking look at it. Right? I mean, this is what I tell people who invest in Bitcoin, right? I'm like, listen, buy Bitcoin and then just walk away. Don't even look at the Bitcoin market. It'll make you sick.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the hardest thing about crypto is when you most want to buy crypto is when you're the most into it. And the truth of the matter is you should buy it and walk away, but that's what you're least likely to do because but I'm just seeing it for the first time now.
Right. People get excited about it and they pay a lot of attention while they're excited about it. But it's like anything. Once you've been into it for 5 years, it's like it's something you think about from time to time. It's not something.
The vast majority of investing, Americans have such a short attention span. The guy who's buying and selling continuously, making deals and cutting things around, generally makes less in the long run than a guy who single investment and doesn't touch it again for 15 years. The longer play is usually the steadier play.
Yeah. Stocks are like a Puerto Rican girlfriends, just walk away.
Or as Mexican airmen would point out, Venezuelan big booty girls. I want to address a question in the chat. When was the last time that China has won a war or gone to war? The Solomon Islands 3 years ago. They went in and restored order. China does a lot of military operations around the globe that don't make the headlines. And they've contributed to the Indian Ocean anti-piracy operation for over a decade and have done some actual legit fighting of pirates. And they are one of the largest, if not the largest. I believe a while ago it was the largest. It might not still be, but they were the largest contributor of troops to UN peacekeeping operations solely for the purpose of gaining their NCOs some combat experience. So they're quiet and in the background, but China does know how to go to war. And they fight in India constantly. Might not be with modern weapons, but they fight a lot up there on the top of the world with sticks and rocks.
So instead of firing back with countermeasures, immediately Beijing released a white paper, a 28,000 word white paper detailing its economic relationship with the U.S. as a foundational to global stability. Chinese State Council of Information Office released the white paper on Wednesday titled China's Position on Some Issues Concerning China-U.S. Economic and Trade Relations. And it basically provides statistics about the U.S. Economic relationship. It says, here's a quote, China does not deliberately pursue a trade surplus, the white paper said. Bullshit. They absolutely do. The trade imbalance in goods between China and U.S. is both an inevitable result of structural issues in the U.S. economy and the consequences of comparative advantages and internal division of labor between the two countries. Joe, this is like if they're talking, they're lying. You know, it's kind of, you know, the way it works.
I think that's actually silly. Every nation pursues a trade surplus. It's just that's the way that trade works, right? You want to sell more than you buy, so that you have money to buy more stuff. Weird. On a side note, Random PNW says he's rereading The Bear and the Dragon. President Ryan has a similar economic policy to Trump. I'm almost positive that's where Trump got the idea. I'm pretty sure that in the book they even called it the reciprocal tariff policy. So,
well, I think what it is that Clancy watched that interview with Donald Trump in the early '80s, and he's like, "Yeah, it's actually a pretty good idea Trump's got there. Let me give that to Jack Ryan." Yeah. Chinese state media Xinhua news agency provided more details about the white paper. The white paper came as a rising unilateralism and protectionism in the U.S. has significantly impeded normal economic and trade cooperation between the two countries. You know, here's the irony, Joe, is the protectionism is like, listen, I need an advantage, so I got to raise tariffs to protect my industry, and that's the reason why we're doing it, right? Like, because we want to grow the industry, and we can't subsidize it, so we protect it, right? The problem is that it's literally the opposite. We're literally underwater against almost every country in the world when it comes to trade imbalance, reciprocal tariffs, all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of like they're doing this on purpose. These measures revealing the isolationist and coercive nature of U.S. conduct run counter to the principles of a market economy. Oh, yeah? Tell me about it. Tell me about you and your market economy and multilateralism, and will have serious repercussions for China-U.S. economic and trade relations, the white paper said. In response to the U.S. moves, China has taken forceful countermeasures to defend its national interest and has remained committed to resolving disputes through dialogue and consultation with multiple rounds of consultations with the U.S. To stabilize bilateral, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So China ain't happy. That's the kind of the bottom line up front on that one, and they're kind of going out of their way to show it. So that's one aspect of what's happening in the conflict between China and America. Now, Joe, let's get back to the Panama Canal because we focused on this quite a bit last month. More illegal landmines for C.K. Hutchison, BlackRock Panama port deal. So if you didn't think that you had heard the end of this one, let me tell me if you think the State Department isn't poking BlackRock as the kind of actor on this. The future of the C.K. Hutchison deal to sell two Panamanian ports, the Balboa and Cristobal terminals, to BlackRock-led consortium is in dire straits after Panama's top auditor revealed widespread contractual breaches and claimed the port operator owes the country millions of dollars.
Wait. Are they saying the Chinese are not honest dealers in international?
I know, right? Oh my God, it's Joe. I can't believe I'm cheering on BlackRock in their war against
be a bridge too far for me to believe.
I know, right? It's kind of like. Is this the one where you stand back and you post the "Let them fight" meme? It's kind of like
Yes.
I just
the map shows Cologne there, a place I've been. So what you're saying is the port system got a colonoscopy, much like some people we know. So.
I mean, when the country gets old, it's something that they have to look out for. It's like I called the doc yesterday. I called her the mechanic. So you're my mechanic. I'm coming here for to get. to get the oil changed. Let me jump into this. Panama's top auditor revealed let's see, blah, 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 blah. I already read that part. This comes shortly after Beijing launched their antitrust probe into the deal while trade war tensions between Washington and China intensified. At its core, the port sale revolves around President Trump's push to secure hemispheric defense. There's that term, hemispheric defense, which I think is a good one to continue to use. By terminating Chinese control of critical parts of the canal. Joe, if the Trump administration effectively wrests control from China of the Panama Canal through these kind of legal kind of means and whatnot, and without a shot being fired, that's quite the coup. I mean, that is literally like, attaboy, that's something he can like literally stand on his 4-year term at the end saying, I kicked China out of the Panama Canal and I gave it back to U.S. control. On Monday, Panama's Comptroller General Anel Flores told the reporters that CK Hutchinson Panama Ports Company 2021 renewal of the 25-year port concession was plagued with procedural breaches. Flores said the PPC used tax breaks to evade $850 million in taxes out of the $1.3 billion owed the first 25 years of the contract. Flores accused CK Hutchinson of operating shadow companies to obscure revenue. He alleged that the PPC still owed the Panamanian government $300 million. Timing the audit is another hurdle to CK Hutchinson's proposed $22.8 billion sale of 43 global ports to a BlackRock-led consortium. First announced in March, the deal was already delayed last week amid surging pressure from Beijing. For weeks, various Chinese media outlets called CK Hutchinson, billionaire founder, spineless and questioned which side he should stand on. The irony here, Joe, is that how much are we going to find out? Like, I think the Chinese might actually be scared that, that the infrastructure that they've laid out to have basically forward deployed troops all over the world may come to light.
Well, absolutely, because this was not really meant as a moneymaker for them. It was a side note. The money was a side note. It's a way to fund further things. But the real purpose here was unobstructed passage through the canal, no matter who is in power in Panama. And no matter which way the political winds blew. And enables them to get things to their other forward ports that Hutchinson owns in the Caribbean, which a lot of people don't really remember, but they own several.
Weird. Why would China be focusing so much on the Caribbean?
The Gulf of America. It's ours. Get your damn commie hands off of it.
They're like, we want to rename it the Gulf of Mexicali. If you know, you know. Look at the demographics of the Mexican city of Mexicali. So.
Here's more from Bloomberg. Flores said that he plans to file a criminal complaint with Panama's Attorney General office on Tuesday against the maritime authorities who granted the 2021 contract renewal and against executives from Panama ports. He said that he will also inform Panama's maritime authority of audits results, and an agency will need to decide whether to rescind the contract. BlackRock CEO Larry Fink, was asked about the port deal at an economic club of New York on Monday, and he said regulatory review for the anti-competition of the deal would take 9 months or more. But overall, he said he's very optimistic the transaction will be approved. Fink acknowledges Beijing could derail the deal, emphasizing that it's driven by commercial interests, not geopolitical. See, this is where Fink doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. This is where he's assuming that they're playing they're playing the game that he's playing. They're playing a totally different fucking game. They're not playing the game of markets and money. They're playing a game of forward.
Would you like to play global thermonuclear war?
Exactly. Would you like to play a game? Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. Fink acknowledged, while the Panama port deal appears to inevitably be delayed, President Trump made the same move by extending the TikTok deadline by 75 days last week. These delayed deals are bargaining chips for Beijing and Trump in an escalating trade war.
Y'all know they're never actually going to ban TikTok, right? I mean, I called that when this whole thing first started, before Trump was ever in office, that no one's going to ban TikTok ever.
I mean, I think eventually it's going to get bought and sold into some American conglomerate. But, if I will be happy if they get the servers out of China and they get they gain control of the code by some U.S. agency that has some sort of, the NSA or somebody being able to kind of say, yeah, this is clean. By the way, of all, watch I know you're our resident tech guru. X is the least obtrusive of all social media platforms when it comes to the data points that they collect on you.
Correct. It's one of the many reasons why X is literally the only social media platform I use.
All right. All right. Anything else about the Panama Canal? That's China, getting its hackles up over that.
I honestly think the
surprise there
right now, if push came to shove, you would find Chinese Marines at those ports that they're just not willing to give them up at all.
Yeah, but the problem is, Joe, is they haven't had time to deploy. This is one of those kind of slow build things. Like this, we don't plan to use them this year. We plan to use them in the future, i.e., 5 to 10 years from now. So if there's any advantage of doing it now, it's that they may not be ready for it yet. All right, moving on. The U.S. Space Force chief warns Congress of China's space capabilities in potential Indo-Pacific war. I thought this was interesting, living in the Indo-Pacific as I do. But I'm interested in space in general. I like tech. I like, things that are going to be relevant in the future. AI, space, quantum computers, and crypto. These are 4 things I think will be relevant, in the next 20 to 50 years. And so if that's why I always perk up whenever I hear news in these areas. China's ambitions in space pose a powerful destabilizing force to the U.S. economy, national security, according to General Chance Saltzman, chief of space operations for U.S. Space Force. Space has become a war-fighting domain. Saltzman told the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission, a bipartisan congressional panel, in a hearing on April 3rd. Over the last 2 decades, our competitors, China in particular, have invested heavily in the counter space threats, kinetic and non-kinetic weapons that can deny, degrade, or destroy our satellites. Joe, this is one thing that we haven't focused on. And I honestly just have not seen a lot of information out there in the open source about is what are Chinese space capabilities, and are we taking these serious?
Well, everyone, this is just one of those other areas in which China flies under the radar quite a bit on. They have Absolutely. A lot more capability in this area, but mostly because their media is closed. You don't get to hear very much about what they're doing, especially in their space program, because not only do they believe in secrecy, but they actually mean it, unlike in America. So,
well, Joe, their media, unlike our media, is actually a willing participant and coordinating arm of the CCP, right? I mean, So if you see it in the Chinese media, it is absolutely the gospel word that the Chinese media wants, or the Chinese Communist Party wants you to see. He goes on to explain the modern battlefield has to account for space domain. He says, if we can't continue to protect our use of the domain and we can't deny an adversary, it's going to be tough to meet military objectives in any of the other domains. In his written testimony, Saltzman explained that the Chinese military regime, the PLA, has set out military objectives for space domain. Intelligence suggests the PLA likely sees counter space operations as means to deter and counter U.S. military intervention in a regional conflict. The general said China's space weapons include ground-to-space missiles, ground-based lasers, the latter of which can disrupt, degrade, and damage satellite sensors. By the late to mid to late 2020s, we expect them to deploy systems high enough in power that they can physically damage satellite structures. Currently, China's military exercises regularly incorporate radio frequency jammers against space-based communications radars and navigation systems. Intelligence suggests the PLA may be developing jammers to target greater range of frequencies, including U.S. military protected extremely high frequency systems. Starlink's great, Joe, but that doesn't mean it's unjammable. And it may take a lot of energy to jam it over a wide area, but that doesn't mean you can't affect it.
Correct.
The interesting thing is that the hard thing for them the thing that Starlink has going for it, and if you don't think the Starlink wouldn't be nationalized in a heartbeat if we went to actual war with China, trust me, it would be. There's just so many of the damn things, and they can replace them very quickly. Watcher, you're kind of a fan of the drones, right? Even if you made like little space drones, it would be really hard to go after the Starlink satellite network. It's just so dense.
It's dense. There's another bit of it that makes it a lot harder to go after. So most
the laser communications.
No. So the fact is that it's in low geostationary orbit. Not geostationary orbit. It's in low Earth orbit. It's
LOE. Yeah, low Earth orbit.
Very low.
LEO.
And they're moving very fast.
The way to defeat it isn't necessarily kinetically. It is jamming a very specific frequency in the 450 megahertz band.
But see, that's the problem, Joe. Is
also, arguably the much easier way to go after it is just what they're already planning to do. Starlink long term could be rerouted to act without using the undersea cables, but the fact is like 90% of the data that Starlink wants to access through its network is accessed through those undersea cables. All you have to do is screw with either the ground stations or the cables that those ground stations communicate through. Look, everybody wants to look at the satellites, and it's like long-term, yes, when we have something in orbit that can actually, attack satellites, that's a long-term good strategy. It's not really a great strategy here, just because it's high money value to try and use an anti-satellite weaponry, and honestly, on a constellation like Starlink, it's not that effective. And I think the reason everybody wants to look at taking down satellites is because they have the ability to fly over your territory, right? And so it becomes a natural extension of securing your own aerospace. But I think long term, sure. I think that, look, what limited anti-space assets people have are going to be aimed at the various, what do we want to call these? The various unmanned shuttlecraft that both the U.S. and China have that very well could be theoretically shuttling nuclear payloads.
The X-37
from orbit. The X-37 and then the Chinese equivalent. That have both been making regular trips to orbit and staying in orbit for very long periods of time, inexplicably, for years now. For almost a decade now, they've been playing back and forth. I think those are the type of assets that we would use the limited anti-space assets we have for. Not because we don't I don't think that between China and Russia they have enough missiles to take out the whole constellation for Starlink.
Starlink is a pretty robust system, so you're going to have to go at it, like I said, in an asymmetric manner. Joe, you're absolutely right. You can jam a given area on the surface of the Earth with that frequency. You can jam it both from the Earth side, but also from the space side. But that just, it's like they don't have infinite amount of jammers, though.
Right.
China's advancement in space technology, their stated desire to dominate, and Beijing's disregard for international norms for the responsible use of space make them an incredible danger to the U.S. prosperity and security. What's it called? Kessler syndrome, I think, is something like that.
Kessler syndrome, yes.
Yeah,
and honestly, it is one of the things that I am very fearful of. It's us trapping ourselves on Earth because we put too much space junk in orbit, one way or the other.
Yeah, and you know that's why they always try to deorbit everything. That at least that NASA puts up. This is the kind of stuff that China just doesn't give a shit about. You know, why pay to deorbit it when, you know, let the Americans worry about that shit, you know?
Right.
So, you know, that's actually that's probably the only chance.
Well, I just want to refresh people's memories in case they either are just becoming conscious now or what. But anybody remember Tiangong-1? Whole space station just left to deorbit randomly wherever.
Yeah.
Hope it doesn't fall on the U.S.
Right. Yeah, it was a rather haphazard affair, if you will. And if I remember correctly, it did come down early. It was not.
Yes,
it was supposed to stay up longer.
Yeah, I think. It came down substantially early, years. But I think it came down. Wasn't it in the Atlantic somewhere?
I think so. I think it came over like Florida and some other areas like that. So, all right, let's move on. Final one here is Joe. You know, the Chinese have not been at war lately, but they've sent people to war. Evidently, Ukraine captures Chinese nationals fighting for Russia in first of war.
Look, I'm sorry. Before we go anywhere, I fucking called this.
Oh yeah, we all knew this was going to happen eventually.
I think that this didn't surprise anyone, and they're probably Chinese national civilians, just like American and British national civilians have been caught over there. Released from their military contract to pursue a private contract, and then they will return to their military contract when they get back. Wink, wink, nod, nod.
Let's see what we got here. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Tuesday announced that 2 Chinese nationals fighting in the Russian army had been taken prisoner from the battlefield in eastern Ukraine. Zelensky touted proof of their capture, saying Ukraine's military in the Donetsk region obtained the captured Chinese nationals' documents, bank cards, and personal data. We have information that there are many more Chinese citizens in occupiers' units than just 2. We now are finding out the facts, Zelensky said in a statement posted to Telegram. I've instructed Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine to immediately contact Beijing to find out how China is going to react to this. They're like, I don't know, these are civilians. They just went to Russia on their own and joined up. I mean, what do you want us to do? That's what they're going to say. Russia's involvement of China in the war in Europe, directly or indirectly, is a clear signal. That Putin is going to do anything except end the war. Kiev, I don't agree with that. I think this is absolutely one of the things that China is demanding in order for them to give Russia support, technological and material support during the war, which has continuously gone on. Where do you think they're getting new thermal sights and things like this for their tanks that they're building? They've built more tanks since the beginning of this war than almost. And now, let's be honest, most of them are reconditioned, but still, they are churning out tanks at a pace that nobody expected, and it's because they're getting help from China. Let's see. It's yet unclear as to whether the alleged captured Chinese nationals are volunteers, mercenaries, or have actually been integrated into the regular Russian army. President Xi had, around the start of the Ukraine war, declared a no-limits partnership with Putin. Yeah. I mean, shocked when he actually lives up to it. However, there's been no evidence to suggest that Beijing has directly facilitated the movement of Chinese troops to Russia or Ukraine. Joe, what's your take on this?
I think that it's more of China trying to get some combat experience for its NCO Corps or Junior Officer Corps. like all East Bloc armies, they rely more on junior officers than NCOs, right? So their NCOs aren't necessarily professional soldiers like they are in the American or British military. So they want to try to get them out and get experience. This is a great place to do it. I'm not sure why Ukraine is releasing this now, though, because it can't be the first Chinese nationals they've picked up.
Yeah. It's got to be to put pressure on the West. To, hey, look, try to give Russia
We're fighting China too, guys. Look at us. It's entirely possible.
Let's look at this video of this guy. They clearly didn't catch the smartest Chinese guy ever to exist. I mean, maybe that's the reason why they sent these guys.
嘣嘣嘣嘣嘣嘣嘣嘣嘣，然后我的 commander， 嘣，然后就哇，然后就啊，然后我就我啊
little Chinese version of the pointy talkie.
What a skillful trainer.
I think I speak more Chinese than he speaks English, and I'm not in a combat zone.
I know how to say what is it? Ni hao, xie xie ye ye.
However, I would point out that I could get you a guy from far southeastern Siberia and putting next to a guy from far northeastern China, and you would
they would look
tell the difference.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
And guess what? They would both probably speak Chinese. So,
yeah. Oh my God! Don't get me started.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you guys want to talk about with China? Because that's all I got for today, guys. I'm gonna have to keep the Iran one short because I've got to call it at the 2-hour mark today. So let's roll with this first one. State Department says talks with Iran are not a negotiation, will be direct. Now the interesting thing here is that Rubio has been pretty tough on both Iran and Turkey, two things that I think are pretty important in this region. Of all the disappointments and surprises in the administration, I did not think, 2 months ago, I would be like cussing Kash Patel's name and going, Rubio's doing a pretty good job. These are things I did not expect to be saying at this point in the administration. Ahead of expected talks between the United States and Iran over the weekend, the State Department pushed back on the idea that the discussion would be a negotiation over Tehran's nuclear program. This is a meeting that's happening, right? On Saturday, there's a meeting. There's no negotiations, said the State Department spokeswoman Tammy Bruce told reporters on Tuesday. This is a dynamic where the president has made very clear, and certainly that the secretary has made very clear, that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. It's touching base. Yes, again, it's not a negotiation. It's a meeting. After some of the things that I've heard, I tend to believe this. I think this is the carrot and the stick is sitting out of Diego Garcia. The bombers that have been massed out there so that we can basically turn whatever spots we want to turn into Iran into a flaming, pit pretty damn quickly. Now, Joe, you remember last year, Israel pretty much wiped out the entire integrated air defense system of Iran. Now, that has clearly probably been restructured and rebuilt to a certain extent. But I can't imagine their air defense is as good now as it was last year when Israel let me be honest. One of the biggest surprises I've seen out of this everything that's happened since October 7th, 2 years ago, is how fucking absolutely steamroll Israel was on Iran. I mean, they just fucking they absolutely dominated them when it came to those air strikes against their integrated air defense systems. I was not expecting that.
I was, because here's the thing: as great an air defense system as Iran bought, it was still manned by Iranians.
Yeah.
Iranians are not known for their highly skilled technicians in literally any area, so it didn't surprise me.
Yeah,
There's
and the
significant number of Israeli spies working in the air defense industry there.
very, very penetrated by Israeli. The Israeli intelligence has proved that they are all that and a bag of chips in the over the last year and a half. Kudos on the pagers. Kudos on getting the people inside the actual compound of the IRGC and assassinating that. What was he? Hamas leader? What was the guy that they killed inside of Tehran? They assassinated him.
Hezbollah leader, actually.
Yeah. And so, I mean, they've really just kind of proved themselves over and over up to the challenge. And so I get the feeling that if probably with our help, if Israel can do that last year, it would be pretty damn easy for us to do it this year, especially if we put the full weight of all the shit that we're willing to put in against the country. So my point is not that I'm hoping for that to happen. I hope that does not happen, because the last thing we need to get involved in is a fucking another foreign war. But if that is the stick that Trump is waving about, he's probably saying, listen, you give up your nukes and you do it in a way that we can verify, and you can sell your oil to anybody that you want. You can sell as much stuff. You can open your economies. We'll drop all of your sanctions. That's probably the deal he's willing to make with Iran. But, in order to do that, they've got to completely, bend the knee on the nuclear program. No more of this kind of unverified stuff that we'll pay you with pallets of cash for. Steve, let's see. When it comes to Iran, the president has reimposed crippling sanctions on the Iranian regime. He's made it very clear to Iran that they have a choice to make. You can strike a deal with the president, or you can negotiate, or there will be hell to pay, said Levitt. Bruce confirmed Steve Witkoff, the special envoy to the Middle East, will represent Trump administration during the session. But beyond that, both White House and State Department have been tight-lipped concerning the details about the planned talks, which Trump announced during the Oval Office meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday. Trump also asserts the U.S. was already conducting direct diplomacy with Iran for the first time since 2018, when he exited an Obama-era nuclear deal with the country. We're having direct talks with Iran. They've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen, Trump said. The Iranian foreign minister later posted on X that the meeting with Trump reference would take place in Oman, and that the talks would be indirect, high-level talks. It's as much an opportunity as it is a test, he said. Joe, I'm skeptical that the Iranians can get out of their own way on this one, but who knows? I mean, maybe Trump scares the shit out of them.
I don't think so. I think this is Iran trying to see how much cash they can get. They're trying to shake the money tree. They've already said that there will be no agreement without sanctions relief. And Israel has already said that they won't agree to anything unless there's a complete dismantling of the Iranian nuclear program, which Iran says is off the table. So this all sounds good, but nothing will come of it. We've had talks with Iran before. They always end up in the same place. So.
Watcher, this is where I wish we had this clip. The famous line from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory is what they should say to Iran: "You get nothing." My favorite part of the movie. You stole fizzy lifting drinks. You get nothing.
Okay.
It's a cultural, kind of touchstone there, Joe. Didn't you go in as a kid? Didn't you go see Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory? Surely you did. All right. We just got the X viewers over. We got over 900, but then we just slid back. All right. Currently, Chinese military exercises are incorporating. Let's see. That's not what I was on the wrong way. All right. I need to move on to the next story here. Iran warns neighbors not to help the U.S. I wonder who they're talking about. Probably Iraq is who I'm thinking, because the next story talks about Iraq. Okay, interesting. But here's the thing. The IRGC doesn't have the cred this year that it had 2 years ago. Yes. What do you think about that? They've kind of lost a lot of...
Well, here's the thing. They're going to have to regain face somewhere, and Iraq is probably the easiest place to do it. So I think that there's a fight that's really coming up. So this is just Iran posturing against their neighbors. Think about who else are their neighbors too, though. Straight across the Persian Gulf, Qatar, Bahrain, some of the other places. On that note, if anyone knows an armorer willing to move to Qatar for a year, DM me. I gotta fill a position. So,
Iran warns neighbors not to help the U.S. if attacks. Tensions escalate in the Gulf, and the Islamic Republic addresses potential acts of hostility from countries that have American bases. So, on that list would be Qatar, it would be Kuwait, it would be Saudi Arabia, it would be. I don't think we have a base in Oman, but it would definitely be Iraq.
No.
Iran has warned the neighboring Gulf neighbors that the American military bases not be involved with any potential strike, days after raising its alert level as U.S. increased its military presence in the region. So clearly, we have convinced the Iranians that we're getting ready to strike. Iran issued notices to Kuwait, Iraq, UAE, that's right, I forgot about them, Qatar, Turkey, and Bahrain to warn them against allowing the U.S. use. Now, I think that Qatar probably would probably bend the knee, and Turkey, but the others I'm not sure of. Maybe Bahrain too, probably. Let's see, less to be considered an act of hostility, an Iranian official said. Tehran has rejected President Trump's offer to talks to curb its nuclear program. Here's the ironic thing, that the article that I just read about the talks occurring, that came out 3 days after this article did. I wonder which one is... This is Iran basically saying, well, you remember how he said there wouldn't be any talks? We lied. Tehran rejected Trump's offer to talks to curb its nuclear program, although secret informal discussions are thought to have taken place over the past weeks in Muscat, the capital of Oman. Analysts believe that Iran, having lost its frontline offensive with the weakening of Hezbollah in Lebanon, the defeat of Bashar al-Assad in Syria, will want to cling to its nuclear program as its last military strategy. Iran had wanted to extend a nuclear umbrella over its terrorist proxy as they attack Israel and moderate Sunni states. Iran will therefore want to cling to its nuclear program as the anchor for its planned recovery and to draw out talks with the Trump administration to gain time and legitimacy for its alarming nuclear progress. This is kind of what I expected of Iran. Rattle their saber locally, but ultimately give in to demands from the Trump administration. Now, give in doesn't necessarily mean give up the ghost, but it's definitely kind of acquiescing in order to get a better treatment in the short term. What's your kind of take on this, Joe?
I think that my take on the whole thing is that, as I just said, there's going to be a fight between these countries. It's a matter of when. There's nothing that we can give Iran right now that we're willing to give them. we'll give them sanctions relief in exchange for dismantling their nuclear program. They won't do it. It's not going to happen. I think that Iran knows the strike is coming, so they're going to threaten their neighbors and say, hey, look, don't let them use the bases on your land to strike us, because we might not be able to strike Diego Garcia and we might not be able to strike the U.S., but we can hit Iraq and we can hit it all day long. Uh-huh. I think that you're right. That's exactly who this message is directed at. And no, the Taliban did not give us back Bagram, and we're not going to strike them from there. It's in a bad spot anyway for hitting anything strategic in Iran. So,
I'm going to move on to the next story. There's a lot more in that story, but that was kind of the big meat that I wanted to talk about. So, this is going into forget the signal chat. The strike on the Houthis was a necessary blow. This is the current. So they were defeated in Syria. They were defeated in their Hezbollah proxies were defeated. They've been defeated in Gaza. This is the current area where Iran is. People are they're finding out that Iran is not what it was cracked up to be as far as a threat. Now, Joe, you've mentioned more than once, and I think this is key for everybody to mention, and this kind of goes back to the same thing we were talking about with the cartels, is that just because we're kicking their ass all over the Middle East doesn't mean they can't slip in a 50-man, basically wrecking crew into the U.S. to basically absolutely disembowel the soft underbelly of America.
I think 50 men is grossly optimistic. I think they've smuggled in a few thousand.
No. I'm just saying that just 50 would be enough to bring us to our knees.
I'm betting that there's a lot more, and
there's a lot more.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with you there. So the Biden administration mostly chose to ignore growing threat to the world commerce posed by the Houthis and an Iran-backed group. Now, here's the thing, Joe. I think that because the Houthis attacked us, we have to attack them back. But I'm increasingly thinking that, ultimately it shouldn't be our job to defeat the Houthis. This is something that our European allies should come in and take care of, because it's their shipping that goes through the, by and large, goes through the Sinai into the Mediterranean, through the Suez, and so. I think ultimately there should be a lot of pressure on Europe for them to get off their fucking ass and do something about the Houthis. That being said, they won't do it. And so, ergo, that's the reason why we've decided to take up the mantle. Let's see. Striking the Houthis weakens the one still functional arm of the Iranian malfeasance in the region, right? So if there is an advantage to striking the Houthis, that is surely only in the U.S. interest. This is it. If we decide that we're going to take on Iran in a head-to-head, war, then getting rid of Iranian proxies in the region, especially kind of in your rear, is absolutely a valid stratagem. So maybe that's what they're doing. I'll be honest with you. I think they're dropping a lot of bombs. If they think they're going to strike Iran, they should save them for Iran. Because we do not have an infinite supply of bombs and missiles.
We do not.
Yeah. Meaningful success will not come easily. Using air power alone to defeat militias has traditionally been difficult. In this case, though, there's a distinction that has been overlooked by many critics. The goal is not to eliminate the Houthis; it's to create good governance. Instead, it's to force them to cease using high technology missiles and drones to attack ships at sea. This is actually a pretty good point, Joe. This is a much more narrower kind of. This is kind of like the old school American gunboat diplomacy, right? Narrow objectives, executed violently. Yeah, you're in, you're out, and hardly any Americans ever get hurt when you do it.
Right.
Well, I mean, could you imagine having to send young Marines into, we're gonna seize some sort of fucking objective in Yemen. I mean, what a fucking nightmare that would be.
Yeah, Sana'a is a really bad town to try and to land at, mostly because all of the buildings are mud and not much cover and concealment. Be almost as bad as going into Bandar Abbas, but hey, what do I know?
What do I know? All right.
Probably run into just as many Iranians too. If you don't think there are Iranians operating the targeting radars, then I can't help you, because there are.
Oh yeah, there are 100%. So this is kind of gets up. We're a little bit out of order, but that's fine. Netanyahu says Iran should blow up its own nuclear sites under U.S. supervision. I agree with this. I think this is actually one of the ways that Iran could actually get out from underneath this crap that they're in. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Tuesday that if the U.S. indirect talks with Iran over its nuclear program fails, then a military attack becomes inevitable. Let's see. I know it's not Mossad Monday, but let's play the video here of Netanyahu. It's got subtitles, so we can read what he's saying here. Maybe just turn the volume down a little bit. I tell you what, I'll read the subtitles. All right. In the is 2 months for a visit. I have finished my second visit in the U.S. in 2 months. It's a very warm visit with my friend President Donald Trump. You can be impressed from the great closeness and friendship between us, which was expressed in the issues we discussed. First of all, Iran. We agree that Iran will not have nuclear weapons. This cannot be done by agreement, but only if this agreement is Libyan style. They go in, blow up the installations, dismantle all the equipment under American supervision. By the way, what did that get? Muammar Gaddafi. He literally did everything we asked him to do with his nuclear weapon program, and what did it get him?
Smoked.
Yeah, in the street, right? So Netanyahu is saying that we should do this under American supervision and carry it out by America. This would be good. The second possibility is that is to drag out the talks. And then there is a military option. Everyone understands this. We spoke about this at length. So yeah, basically, here's the other thing too, Joe. If we go with the military option on Iran, I think Israel's in it with us, even if they never admit that they're flying operations. I think it'll be obvious that they are, but ultimately, I think we'll have at least one ally in this whole thing if we go in. All right. Trump himself appeared to allude to either or scenario. I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious, and the obvious is not something that I want to be involved with, or frankly, that Israel wants to be involved with if they can avoid it. But it's getting very dangerous territory, and hopefully these talks will be successful. We're having direct talks with Iran, and we've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see that it can happen. Netanyahu's interesting description of blowing up or exploding Iran's nuclear sites appears akin to what the U.S. Under George W. Bush offered Libya's Muammar Gaddafi. The strongman had famously come out in the cold and gave up all W&D programs in return for the end of global isolation and Western sanctions. Bush had at the time reportedly warned Gaddafi, either you get rid of your weapons of mass destruction or the United States will personally destroy them and destroy everything with no discussion. At the end, Gaddafi did just that, which didn't get him too far. It seems to be the rhetoric of Netanyahu's echoing now should be remembered. However, Gaddafi was still toppled due to U.S. NATO military intervention in 2011. Again, this is after he gave up his advanced weapons, leaving Libya more.
Correct the accuracy, it was not a U.S. military intervention. It was a NATO military.
NATO, yeah.
There were French and British planes there too.
Yeah, in fairness, it says U.S.-NATO military intervention, which is technically true, but you're right. We did it as part of the NATO force. It was a NATO-led operation.
Yeah.
Let's see. The meanwhile, journalists can
supposedly defensive NATO conducting yet another offensive war
outside of Europe, mind you.
Yes.
Let's see. Meanwhile, Ken Klippenstein has pointed out that the Pentagon just prepared for Trump to go berserk on Iran if he gives the order. The largest single deployment of stealth bombers in U.S. history, the Pentagon has sent 6 B-2 Spirit aircraft to Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The long-range bombers, which are uniquely suited to evade Iranian air defenses, can carry America's most potent bunker-busting weapons. Flew in from Missouri last week in a little noticed operation. Everybody noticed that they showed up there, and we've been talking about it for over a week now.
If you say little noticed, I'm going to say, look at the screen, Scott. Bro, just what the can says.
Yeah, I know, right? Bro. B-2s carry not just bombs, but a message for Iran. Do you see the sword? As one retired general told Newsmax this week. I agree with that. I do think it was not meant to be hidden. They basically leaked it out there that this is what they were doing, putting the B-2s there. And this is the fucking carrot and the stick approach. And the B-2s on Diego Garcia are the stick. All right. And so I found this to be an interesting development, Joe. And based on the date, this is April 8th. So, and it was updated during the day of the 9th for me. That would have been overnight of the 8th for you guys. Exclusive, Iran-backed militias in Iraq are ready to disarm to avert Trump wrath. Here's my question, Joe. Is this the PMP guys basically getting their marching orders from the Quds Force because Iran has decided it's not going to go to the mattresses on this whole deal? I wonder about that.
Yeah, I don't know. Or they know they've been told that strikes are coming and that they're going to be part of the package unless they give up their arms. So
now let's be honest. These guys, these PMP guys, were on either one side or the other of U.S. coalition forces just going hog wild in Iraq during the 2000s. Maybe some of these guys remember what that was like and are just like, listen, I'll fight ISIS, I'll fight whoever, but I don't want to be on the receiving end of what I saw back in the mid 2000s. Officials told Baghdad unless that it acted to disband the militias operating on its soil, America would target the groups in airstrikes. A senior Shiite Muslim politician close to Iraq's governing alliance told Reuters that discussions between the prime minister and several militia leaders were very advanced, and the groups were inclined to comply with the U.S. calls to disarm. That's interesting to me. Like they have been kind of trading punches with the U.S. for the last couple years. You know, they're the ones that mortared and rocketed U.S. bases out in Anbar province. You know, was it Ali Salim out in the middle of the desert, kind of between Ramadi and Syria. So bases like that have come under pressure. The ones up in Kurdistan, less so. Let's see. The factions are not acting stubbornly or insisting on continuing in their current form, he said, adding that the groups were fully aware that they could be targeted by the U.S. The 6 militia commanders interviewed in Baghdad and a southern province who requested anonymity to discuss the situation are from the Khatib Hezbollah, the Najibah, and the Khatib Sayed al-Shuhada, and Ansarullah al-Afiyah groups. I feel like I'm back in. I feel like I'm back in fucking Iraq again. Trump is ready to take the war with us to worse levels. We know that, and we want to avoid such a bad scenario. The interesting thing is most of these guys were on our side back during the war. You know, the Shia militia guys. These guys were the ones that we recruited into the IP and the Iraqi army. So I gotta wonder if they just want to avoid the fucking scunion that they think that could be brought
or they got one guy to issue a statement that is just to slap Iran in the face.
Yeah, and they're not. Well, here's the other. This is why I think this is more likely Iran basically telling these guys to stand down, because it makes me feel like Iran is close to potential capitulation. I mean, they're never going to fully capitulate, but they've basically kind of looked at what's happened over the last 2 years and realized, we're kind of sucking on hind tit here.
I'm really
sorry, gents.
So, but go ahead.
I'm sorry. I know we moved on from China, but this just came across my news feed, and it's chuckle worthy, and here you go.
All right, hold on a second. Let me blow it up.
Just in, U.S. intelligence agencies warn that China is trying to recruit government employees.
Yeah, they've already done it.
Oh, wow! Breaking news.
In a shocking stroke of the obvious, commander said their main ally and patron, the Iran's elite, the Revolutionary Guards military, has given them its blessing to take whatever decision they deem necessary to avoid being drawn into a ruinous conflict with the United States and Israel. The militias are part of the Islamic resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group of about 10 hardline Shia armed factions that collectively command about 50,000 fighters and an arsenal that includes long-range missiles, anti-aircraft weapons, according to 2 security officials. The resistance group, a key pillar of Iran's network of regional proxy forces, have claimed the responsibility for dozens of missile and drone attacks against Israel. Yeah, I mean, so these guys have been the ones that have been kind of like fucking with us in Iraq for the last 18 months. Suladin's foreign advisor told Reuters in response to queries about the disarmament talks that the prime minister was committed to ensuring all weapons in Iraq were under state control through constructive dialogue with various national actors. The 2 Iraqi security officials said Soudani was pressing for disarmament from all of the militias in Iraq's former resistance in Iraq. Which declare their allegiance to Iran's IRGC or Quds Force rather than Baghdad. Yeah, so this is the reason why I can't imagine it's either a ruse, or it's a capitulation. It's one of the two. I think it's probably a ruse on some level, but I just don't know to which that is.
One thing Iran does not do, and that's capitulate to literally anyone.
Typically, that's right. I would agree with you there. So that's the reason why I think there's more to this. But still, I find this to be a very interesting detail. Almost like they want to preserve the force if something happens. You know, Joe? Like, if these guys stand down, the U.S. won't hit them. If they hit us, then we've got 50,000, loyal men in Iraq that will kind of carry on the fight if we need to. Maybe these are the 50,000 that they put on, planes, trains, and and automobiles and send them to the southern border.
Could be.
All right. I thought that was a pretty interesting story there. That's all I got for the show today, gentlemen. Got through it quicker than I expected. And I'm still at 2 hours and 14 minutes, so I failed. Joe, final thoughts and predictions for the midweek for Hump Day?
I think that we won't see any action against Iran before Saturday's alleged talks, but I expect them to be torpedoed. So I would still expect to see some sort of kinetic action between Israel and the U.S. and Iran. whether it's via proxies. I would expect, though, another Iranian shenanigans for negotiating power like they did last week in seizing a couple of oil tankers. I would expect to see some Red Sea action maybe. But on the domestic note, be watching for crazy people because they are out there. And when they didn't get the massive groundswell of media coverage and support that they wanted for Saturday, they're going to try to do something to generate that.
Joe, I wanted to we're gonna be focusing on domestic topics on Friday. Of course, the economy is a big one, in the markets, and I'm sure we'll have a little more insight on this trade war. Do you think that the trade war is going to give the left? The one thing that I worry about is if enough people look at their 401ks and get scared, then it's going to basically tee that up as an issue that is red meat for the leftist mob. Do you think that's something that's likely, or is it too kind of esoteric for the mob to really grab onto?
I don't know. I think that the vast mob, is too esoteric for it, but not everyone are policy nerds like some of us are.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I mean, we get close to these issues and we see them a lot more, in a different way than a lot of the regular folks out there. Watcher, what's your kind of take on where we're at in the world and what you think's happening?
My only prediction is that Friday will be a fantastic show number 500 of the CFC. I just want to say, gentlemen, thank you so much for before we get there. I'm sure we'll do a lot more of this that day, but it's been like 2.5 years, almost 3 years. It's been fantastic. And I want to thank you guys for getting up every other morning and doing the show with me.
Yeah, 100%. What are we going to do for the show on Friday? Well, it's 500. It's a big number. I think the easy answer is it'll probably be a little bit longer show. It's Friday night for me. So I'll talk to Joe and Watcher, and we're going to see if we can't get rustle up some of the old gang to come on and say hello, at least for part of it. I'd love to get some of our economic smart guys on for the show to fucking tell us if we should really be worried about these tariff things or not from their standpoint. I always feel better when like Jim or Stan come on and say, yeah, this is kind of something you don't have to worry about right now, or because there was a lot of times when I thought the fucking sky was falling and Stan was like, it's not that big of a deal. Oh, okay. I feel a lot better actually now. So we'll see what we can do. We'll put the call out to a couple other folks, some of the other regulars. So it should be a fun show. Make sure you guys check it out. I don't have a third nipple. I wish I did. If I had one, I would definitely show it.
I was gonna say, who's hiding a third nipple? That's the kind of thing you make friends with. Like,
especially if you're like an infantry guy. Like, I knew a guy who had a huge nut, and like that, he would show that to everybody.
Legit, like, yeah, no.
I mean, it was a nut the size of a grapefruit.
Yeah,
I'm like, I wanted to know how he did a ruck march with a.
I don't hang out with guys who show things like that off, so I mean, I don't.
Well,
know.
you weren't. you weren't an infantryman. I get it, Joe. You had a respectable career. You didn't. I like to think that the world's largest fraternity is ultimately the infantry officers.
Look. Somebody explained it to me. They were like, "Look, when they shut down the freak shows, the job opportunities for people with weird bodies went downhill. So it's infantry or not much else."
That's right. I mean, if anybody like volunteers to be the infantry, you gotta figure they're fucked in the head at some point. All right. That's all I got. Show 500 on Friday. Be there, be square. I think I was arguing as UPL. Yeah. Awesome. Well, you know, the UPL sat there with the, it just had to write on the fucking warm cups, right? You know, it's the piss watchers had to go into the bathroom with the guys and like, okay, I have to look at the guy's freaking junk, you know.
All the amazing deformity.
That's exactly the purpose that a pith helmet was created for.
It used to be called a piss helmet, and then we issued one to a certain boxer with the shower.
I just like to say that his pith helmet used to be the same color white as my shirt. Now it is oddly yellow.
Way the liner on this thing is off by a little bit. It's kind of hard to keep it in one spot. But when we saw this going through the old boxes, I was like, I have to have that. That must be recovered. So,
infantry show feet. All my toenails fell out. Does that help? I'm not showing my feet.
The bottoms of my feet are numb from all of the walking. They just literally,
Oh, so here's the thing. Like I tell you, the worst thing I ever did was I let my wife talk me into getting a pedicure. 100% the worst thing ever. They fucking shaved off.
The worst thing you ever did was admitting to that publicly.
Dude, I have a wife. That's the kind of shit guys do when you have wives. It's like you do the stupid shit that they ask you to do.
Never happened. No.
You give in to then eventually you just give in.
It is a whole different thing, though.
Whatever, guys. I'm good with it.
Where is my whip? We need a whip noise right now. Anyway, I'm just kidding.
I'm with you, brother. I definitely gave in because I didn't want to like hear the unceasing, you should have done that. Nope, petties. Yeah, absolutely. So the problem with it is it pulls all of your calluses off your feet. So if you've got like all of that built up, I mean, your feet are like fucking stone. I got blisters for the next 3 months after that. All right, gentlemen, that's all I got for today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you, chat. You guys were awesome. We will be back on Friday with episode number 500 of the Council on Future Conflict. I'm Scott. That's Joe Watcher, and we will all be back here on Friday with who knows who else, talking domestic. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. We might do a little. We may put the link in the chat and invite some of you guys to come on. No camera, of course, and say hello. If we'll see how it works. Sir Rick's hammer. That's better than average. No, thank you. I do not find her attractive. All right, guys. That's all I got. If you haven't done already, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the link with your friends. Let them know you're getting some good stuff here on the Council of Future Conflicts. And as always, gentlemen, stay safe.